All right, ladies, we are live. We are so excited that everyone who is here today has decided to join us for the next speaker panel for the Wives of Integrity Conference.
Woo! Yeah.
Yes!
Let's do it.
That's the spirit we need. If you haven't already seen the previous panels, please go back and watch. They were so awesome. Yeah. I know I personally gained so much knowledge and wisdom from the ladies, and I'm just so excited to see all the workshop from the speakers. I know that God is just moving and that it's going to be a blessing when the conference starts. Little housekeeping things. Please allow StreamYard to have access to your name so that we can see your comments. If not, then it just kind of says Facebook user commented, and it's a little weird and funky. So we want to see you. We want to hear what you have to say. We want to interact with you. So give StreamYard permission. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. First up on my screen, I see Deb. So Miss Deb, if you can give us a little background information about yourself and also tell us about your workshop and what we can expect to learn from your workshop.
Great. I am so excited to be here. So excited. In fact, I came 20 minutes early, so I wouldn't miss it. I am Deb Schroeder and have been married to my husband, Tom, for 28 years. We have 3 children, biological children. We have our oldest son who's 21 and away at college. We have an 18-year-old son, and he is about to graduate. So we're entering another phase of sending another off. And we have our only daughter who is a freshman in high school. So we are wrapping up these school years, traditional school years. And we used to foster our great nephew who we still consider part of our family, even though he has returned back to live with his mom. So that's a little bit about our family. I have had the blessing to homeschool for years, be at home with my kids throughout their early childhood years throughout. And it's actually been the past several years I've stepped back into the workforce doing some substitute teaching, creating my own online ministry that really falls back into before we had kids. My passion has always been working with teens. And I've worked in corrections with adolescent males. I've worked in domestic violence shelters with youth. I have worked at Job Corps centers. And now I'm teaching in the public schools from time to time, just really volunteering at our church with young people. And my heart and passion is around how do we help young people make Jesus their hashtag, make Jesus the most important thing in their life. So that is what a lot of my work is. And you can't really consider young people if you don't really connect with the parents as well. And that is a hard thing, the shift of parenting, and suddenly you're parenting teenagers, and what happens and what does that look like? And so I'm so excited to be bringing the workshop Imperfect Parenting, which I got to tell you, I know quite a bit about imperfect parenting. And I'm excited to bring that to everyone because the reality is we are going to parent imperfectly. We are going to really need to lean into God through these years, through all of our stages of parenting. But particularly when we're hitting these teenage years, we need to recognize that young people are figuring out who they are, who they want to be, what they want to present out to the world, and who they are and how they view God and what they want their own relationship with God to be like. And so I'm so excited to talk about that and to talk about the importance in a marriage, what that looks like to co-parent your teenager with your spouse, and the importance of communication with that, and still giving young people room to figure out their own identity as it relates to Jesus. So that's a quick nutshell. So I'm just really excited about it. And I get excited talking about young people because they are amazing. Sometimes they're scary, sometimes they're crabby, sometimes they're happy, and it all can happen within 30 seconds, all of those emotions. But it's just really something we need to focus on, is how we really parent in these years, and just embrace that we're imperfect and know that we need God to help us through that.
Wow. That is so awesome. I'm so grateful that you're going to be discussing this, especially with the area of teenagers, because if you think about it nowadays, like teenagers are very exposed to so many crazy things. And if we don't teach them at home, then the world is definitely going to teach them, everything but Jesus is what the world's trying to teach kids, right? So the fact that you're so willing to spend time with a group of people who are normally just kind of pushed to the wayside, they're not really heard, kind of just told stay in your place and what I say goes and don't ask any questions. When you were talking, I could totally see your heart and the true love that you expressed there. And I think that is amazing. That is so amazing. I'm wondering if there is a story, is there a specific story that kind of led you to be more interested in the teen group than other age groups?
It is truly, honestly, a God thing. I had I actually began college planning to be a journalism major, and I took my first criminal justice class, and it was actually focusing on youth corrections, one of the classes. And right then and there, I just knew, and I knew that's where God was leading me. And I've done training, specifically a lot of training around youth development and what that looks like, and giving young people a voice and connecting them to services and opportunities and supports, and just really that all has made such natural sense to me, how we need to value young people. And as I look at it this many years later, because I've been doing this for over 20 years working with young people, and when I look at it, it just goes so hand in hand with just what the love of Jesus looks like, and how Jesus looks at anyone and values them and sees amazingness in them. And unfortunately, that's not what everybody sees when they see young people. That is what we know about our own teens and about our own kids. We know the amazingness in them, but in some of the hard moments, it's hard to remember that always. Some of what I'll share a little bit about in the workshop as well talks a little bit about our relationship with our oldest son, who had some struggles, and he's okay with my sharing this because he actually did a 7-part interview series where he talked about his struggles with his faith and anxiety and depression, and we talked about that on the podcast, and just he is so willing to share that, so it helps other young people and it helps parents, because that was a very hard season we walked through as a family. And I think somewhere in this, and I don't touch on it fully, but it's part of my passion, is I think in church raised families or families of faith, we often have this misnomer or this idea that kids aren't going to rebel, or if they rebel in the way they do, we need to carry this extra shame, or we need to hide that. And the reality is that what happened. It's part of my son's story, and God is amazing and miraculous, and he used it to grow my passion even more for this ministry. But more than anything, he used it to glorify himself. He used it to bring our family closer and in a different ways, and he's used it to help my son really create his own faith, his own relationship with God. And I talk about that in the workshop, that young people they're going to create their own, and it's going to be separate from us as parents. And let's be honest, that's scary, right? When you have your 5-year-old reciting Bible verses, and they're all in and they're all excited. And then as they get older, they start to question. And the reality is that questioning, it's a natural part of their development. It's a part of their youth development, who they are, how their brain works, how their brain operates. And we've got to give them that space. And we got to trust God. And I think that is so much what parenting is about, is being willing to acknowledge that God has given us this blessing of children, biological, adoptive, or just if you're loving on your neighborhood children, whatever that is, we've been given this blessing to be this person in a young person's life. And we have to also, though, trust that God's going to lead that. And it doesn't always go the path that we want, but as long as we stay the course of having our own faith and growing our own faith in God, we're going to walk through those parenting years well together. Still going to be hard at times, but we're still going to come out focused on God and have opportunities to grow our faith even further.
That's so powerful. That's so beautiful. When you were talking about your son's story, it made me want to ask you, what words of encouragement could you give to a mother or even a father in this season who's struggling right now with dealing with children who may be questioning their faith and going through some hard times, depression and other things that you mentioned?
Yeah, I would say there's this delicate balance of holding on tight and letting go. And it's this back and forth dance, if you will, of giving young people the space to explore and figure out who they are. Yet we know as parents, we still have to hold them accountable to certain behaviors and rules in our home and expectations. And I just really, my one greatest, well, two things I would say is you're never alone. Even in those moments where it feels like you're alone, you can be frustrated between you and your spouse, have a different approach of it. It could be between you and your child, you feel the relationship shift, or it can even be frustration with God that you have in all of that and it not working, or your desperation or worry or fears that you have. That just remember that you're never alone. And you may not know or see how this story is going to go, but God does. And just to let that wash over you a little bit of peace, to know that you're not alone. And then the second thing is I talk a lot in my ministry about engaging young people. And so my son's story is his story. His walk with God is his walk. At some point, I'm building the foundation when he's younger, but at some point I have to step back and let him go a little bit so he can figure that out. I'm still there to guide. I'm not totally stepping out, still there to guide and just to encourage and whisper the truth of God. Because like you said earlier, our young people are bombarded with worldly lies, attacks from the enemy to become worldly, to sin, to walk in sin, to accept sin as normal. And that's hard for you as a parent to watch your child do that. It's hard to let them go, to know that they have to have the room to make that choice for themselves, and all the while you're praying that they're going to come back around to God if they walked away.
Yes.
Wow. I just wanted to take a moment and share some of the comments really quickly. Someone said, Jesus is my hashtag. I learned from your Instagram so that in a few years, I'm more prepared for my will-be teenage girl. So you're already reaching people. People. Let's see.
Praise God.
Another person says, so beautiful to share those miraculous things. Absolutely. And then another one says, those stories are what bring people to Jesus, because others see themselves in those stories. When they relate to it, they can start relating to Jesus.
Amen.
Amen. Amen. I had one more question. I have so many questions because I'm not a parent myself. So I'm like, teach me, But when you said something, I'm kind of paraphrasing, but you were talking about how you and your spouse may potentially have conflict when you're dealing with something, when you're dealing with situations like this. So for someone who may be married to someone who has a different idea of how to parent in seasons like this, what are also words of encouragement that you can provide as well for that?
I think it is to lean into God together. That really, we walk through difficult seasons, and at the same time this was happening, we had some other extended family dynamics that were making the situation even more challenging and harder. And you're weary, you're tired, you're scared, and your emotions are just so heightened that it's easy for conflict to sneak in. And that would be what the enemy would want, right? He'd love to not only push your child away from Jesus, he'd love there to be conflict in your marriage and to crack in there a little bit so it can infiltrate. And my advice would be, even if you have different views on situations, like I'll give you the example, like I am the biggest rule follower. Like I believe in rules and I like rules, and a rebellious teenager didn't. And I got so nervous at times out of fear that I would hold so tight. My husband would be like, you've got to back off. And right. And you're like, no, there were moments I wanted my husband to be like, nope, your mom's right. And you need to do what she says. And I'm like, so, there's moments you feel like, wait, I didn't feel supported. But I think the commonality that you need to go to are two things. First, you love your child and you would do anything for your child. And sometimes doing anything means letting them go. so that they can find their way back. And just remember that when your child, regardless of how the story ends up, when your child eventually, the goal is, right, you raise your kids, they eventually leave your home. When they hit that stage, you want them to have a relationship with you. But the reality is, you and your spouse are still going to be there. Like when everybody else has left your home, you're still going to be there with your spouse. So you still need to be investing in your relationship, even during like a rough season with a teenager, or you need to be investing in your relationship with God. So what is your individual, but also what does your couple relationship with God look like? Because I can tell you honestly, the commonality we had was that we loved our child and we loved God, and we were able to trust God together. And we knew that if we followed God and his will for us, that we would, we'd come out through this closer as a couple. And we did.
I love that. Trust God. That sounds simple, but it really is the key to any storm, any circumstance in life, is to trust God, because at the end of the day, his plan is perfect. His will for your life is perfect. And he is sufficient. No matter what you're going through, he is sufficient. He is our provider. He promises to never leave us or forsake us. And he's not a man that he should lie. So he's going to keep his word when he tells you that. Even when you can't feel him, he's right there with you, because he's a great father, and nothing in this world can separate you from his love. I don't know. I'm just feeling that in my spirit, but I feel like somebody needs to know that. Like, whether you're a soon-to-be parent or you're currently a parent, know that even if your child is going through things, Jesus is right there working it out with you.
Right.
And he is the
And
ultimate teacher.
I'm sorry, I'd add one other thing. Like, I think we so often worry, and if you look at TV shows and sitcoms, they're so great at painting pictures of how awful and difficult and challenging these teen years are. And so here's what I would say in that. So that's just part of the story, that
Right.
imperfect parenting means that there will be rough moments, but there's also these amazing moments and these amazing experiences we have with our children. And even the rough moments, they're growing and they're becoming who they want to be. And those are the moments we've got to celebrate.
Yes.
That there's so much to celebrate. And I think we build up this fear for parents. Oh my gosh, they're about to hit the teen years, my kids, and what am I going to do? It's not always there's not only terrible moments.
Right.
There are, I will tell you, with 3 kids in our home, they've outweighed the great moments, have outweighed the struggles.
I love that. That
I
is
think
so
that's
true.
interesting, because a lot of people, which I have young kids, but when my first one was coming up on 2, I was like, people talk about the terrible 2s, and I said something about it with my the group of ladies that I was doing Bible study with, and there was a lady, and she goes, "Excuse me, but I'm going to have to stop you." And so she was like, "The power of your words, there's life and death in the power of your tongue."
Amen.
She's like, "You never say that one more time. I don't want to hear it coming." And she's a sweet little old lady, but she said no. And it's the same thing talking about teenagers. Like, stop. When we start feeding that negativity, there's just so much that you're putting that life into it. You're putting that into reality whenever you're speaking. And it's like, no, you can say, yeah, I'm having a hard time, but not like, oh my gosh, the teenagers are coming. Oh my gosh, the terrible things are coming. Like, no, stop it. Can we say that here? Like, just stop.
Yes.
Amen.
Yes.
And that extends to our marriages. Marriage is lovely. Marriage is wonderful. Yes, it's complex and it takes give and take and sharing and struggle and joy, but it's beautiful. And I want to be the women who say, this is God's design. This is God's plan. Marriage is a gift. It's a gift.
Yes.
It is.
Challenging, though, sometimes it may be. It is still a gift, even in those, like, even you're talking about your kids, like that season becomes only a season as you continue to go forward in those things, whether it's your kids,
exactly.
whatever it is. I don't know why that was all coming out, but just things that keep coming up.
Yeah.
Right.
That is so true. It's definitely important to, be wary of who's around you and who's speaking what around you, because a
Right.
lot of times people tend to project their own fears and worries onto you. And like you said, hold on, could we stop? No, thank you. That's not my situation. I'm going to have a marriage. I'm going to have a relationship that thrives with Jesus as a foundation. My children are going to be blessed. They're going to walk in their faith boldly. Even if there are challenges, I know that the outcome is victorious.
Yes.
That's what I'm going to speak. So
Amen.
that's so true. That's so true.
Right.
So true. We got some more comments to share from our viewers. Hope Ware said, I have learned that teens pick the time when they want to talk. If that's 11 p.m., then give up some of your sleep to give your teen frank, honest answers to their questions.
Yes, absolutely.
It's always late.
That's so accurate. That's so accurate. I think about when I was a teenager and I would knock on my mother's door and I'd be like, Mom, are you asleep? She's like, you know I am.
But come on in.
I have a question. Yeah. But because they love us, they want to answer. They want to answer your questions, you know? And I think that actually brings me to another point. It's important to create a safe space for your children to come to. You know, if you're constantly turning them away or rejecting them, or anytime they come to you, you're beating them down, it's going to strain the relationship. Then they're going to feel like, I don't have anybody to talk to. And then they might find something else to, you know, get their information and knowledge from. And that's a whole nother story.
Right. There's 12 key developmental outcomes that all young people need to develop in order to move through adolescence and into adulthood. Right. And that's our goal, is to move them to successfully to adulthood. But in one of the key ones is safety and structure. And like, that's a foundation. Like, you can build all these other skills and abilities in young people, but if they don't feel safe and if they don't have the structure and the consistency they need in their life, those other things aren't going to stick. And that's sort of like, for me, like, that's where their faith is going to grow from too. It has to be a safe place for them. They have to know that they're loved. They have to know in your home that they can come to you. Like, we often talk about one of our favorite, you know, the stage of when kids start to drive. I will admit that can be nerve-wracking when they start to drive. But one of our favorite things is to get our kid in the car, right, and have them drive, because then they have to put their phone down. Then they have to pay attention and they're looking. And we have had some of the most amazing conversations when it's you one-on-one, or myself and my husband and our middle son driving to a football camp. We've had some of the most amazing conversations because, one, they're trapped in the car and they're away from their technology. But you also have just created this safe space, right? You can laugh, you can joke, you can have those fun conversations. And our kids crave that. They crave that time, even if they don't know it or don't feel that they want it. Once they get it, they love it, they appreciate it, they crave that time.
Yeah, it's true. Still to this day, I still crave my parents' time. I'm like, hey, Mom, like, I know I'm far away and I'm grown now, but I have questions and I want to talk to you and I need to spend time with you. And she's like, child, okay, what's up? So that's so true. Those moments that are invaluable. Like, you can't put a price on those moments. They're so special. They really are. And I think kids sometimes don't realize how special those moments are. Like, don't take those moments with your parents for granted. That's what I would have to say. Okay, we have one last comment here. It says, yes, the way we characterize our kids' life seasons make a big difference. Amen. Yes. All right. Well, thank you so much, Deb. This has been wonderful. I have 50 million more questions, but I don't want to bombard all your time. I know that this workshop is going to bless so many people immensely, and I just can't wait to see it.
Thank you. I'm excited.
Yes. All right. Next up, we have Pamela.
Hello.
If you can, you can do the same thing. Just, give us an introduction. Let us know a little bit about yourself, and as well as your workshop and what we can expect to learn from your workshop.
Sounds great. My name is Pamela Henkelman. I'm from the North. I'm a Minnesotan who spent some time in Iowa, and now I'm in Illinois, married to my husband, the pastor. We are coming up on 35 years in October.
Wow.
Yoo-hoo!
Congratulations.
Yeah, and we have raised 5 humans. They're all grown. They're out of the nest. I can't believe it. We walk around saying, can you believe we can just do whatever we want? We can do whatever we want. We can't believe that our schedules and our lives don't revolve around our kids' activities. So it's a fun season. I'm a new podcaster. I'm a speaker and a writer and a life coach. And I really have a heart for the midlife mom. I feel like the midlife mom is the most unrepresented human in the world. Like, we're so supported when our kids are little, and even when they're teens, we're very supported. But once our kids reach adulthood, the world goes quiet, and we're left wondering, what does this mean for me now? What does my relationship with my kids look like? We know that we're supposed to let go. We know that we're supposed to release expectations, but how do we do that? And what does that look like? So I feel like the Lord has just led me to this sweet season of ministering to these moms, and combining that also with an empty nest marriage, because this is pretty awesome. I gotta say, we were pregnant by our first anniversary, throwing up that Red Lobster, and then we had the 5 kids, and it was just busy, and life was so full, and it was all about ministry and life and kids. And so we're thrilled to have this season where we get to focus on each other. It's beautiful. We're 3 years into empty nesting. And so my workshop it's called Life After Kids, Thriving in the Empty Nest. And so we're going to discover how to believe the best about your spouse, how to implement steps to grow closer as a couple, and how to experience the joy of releasing our kids, because a lot of moms really struggle, really struggle. Like, they don't want to release them. They don't want to let go. And so it's just, I'm going to be talking about how to help couples thrive in this season.
I am excited. Simply because like you said, people don't really talk about that time frame in a mother's life. It is like, oh yeah, you're pregnant, you have babies, you have teens, they're in college, and it's like, bye girl.
I know.
You have nothing to do now. Your children are gone, so you shouldn't have anything to worry about. And like, no, I still have things I need to do. I still have things that I need to take care of. I still have a connection to my children, and they've been with me so much in my life that sometimes people feel a emptiness.
Yes,
literally
exactly.
An emptiness when their children
empty, like they've lost a part of themselves. And so we have to help moms understand that there's supposed to be a shift. There's supposed to be this huge shift in the way we relate to our kids. Like Deb talked about, in that phase of teens, we can still guide. We can still tell them things. Now, when they reach adulthood, my friend, that is a whole nother world. They are not up for our unsolicited advice and guidance. They're just not up for it. And you remember when you were a young adult, how you didn't want your parents to tell you what to do? You're like, what? And then when you add kids, their kids, so grandkids, we have 2 grandsons. And so, we're faced with, how will they parent? We're faced with, how do we handle holidays? Oh my gosh. When the first time they don't come home to mama's for Christmas morning, a lot of moms freak out and they ruin their relationships with their kids because they're so demanding. Like, no, you have to be here for Christmas. And I'm like, no, you don't. We can adapt, we can adjust. And so it's just really helping moms work through this emotional overwhelm with God, because apart from God, we cannot do it. We cannot do it. But God is so willing to help us grow and shift even in this way, in this season. So it's a sweet season, I'm telling you.
I love that.
So obviously I clearly need to sign up because I have some out the door. So clearly I'll be at your workshop. But just thinking about, like, do you sense like moms struggling with identity, right? Because their identity is so wrapped up in their children. What's that? How do they transition to that?
Yes, exactly. It's huge. And so I don't know. I feel like I spent a lot of time, and it was probably my connection with God, understanding who I was apart from my children. And so then I could walk into the thing that God's had called me to. I mean, I spent my life pouring into these 5 kids and doing ministry with my husband. So when it was coming to the empty nest, I'm like, well, what in the world am I going to do now? I got to do something, because there's these gifts that God has given me and I don't have to wait. Now is the season to jump into it. So that's when I jumped into writing. I had been speaking a long time. But I was going to write a book. Everyone's like, when are you going to write your book? And I'm like, well, gee, I should really, wow, if I'm going to write a book, I should probably learn how to write a book. And so I joined this online community of writers, and it's just opened this whole new ministry and season for me. And I'm just thrilled. I've always been an encourager. So I just now get to encourage the midlife mama.
I love that. You have to find identity in things outside of your children. Well, first, your identity, of course, should be in Christ.
In Christ.
But,
yep.
How important is it to have, and this might be a simple question, but it's what popped up. How important is it to have like things for yourself, like your own hobbies, your own time away for yourself, self-care, things like that?
Exactly. I'm going to talk about that a little bit in the workshop, just for you and your husband. You know, this is a season, the empty nest is such a beautiful season to focus on your spouse. Like, you're not distracted by the kids anymore. I keep telling you, we just can't believe it. And so we're cultivating things that we can do together even more. The freedom to just go and do. Now, we emptied the empty nest in 2019, about 7 months before COVID hit. So we had these expectations of going and doing, and then here we were stuck in our house. But it's a good thing we like each other a lot. Yes. And so we're just kind of cultivating that. What can we do together? How can we grow together? So it's sweet. And we still work through the things that trip us up. I believe that marriage is the most refining thing that we will ever parent. It's marriage and motherhood. They refine us like no other things. And so my husband and I are complete opposites. And there was a season in our marriage where, this was about 10 years ago, and I was just feeling frustrated with him. Like, you're just annoying me. and I don't even know why, but you're just annoying me. And so one day I was praying and I'm like, God, I know this is not right. This is not good. Why am I feeling so critical and just agitated? And so the Lord said, I want you to make a list. And I'm like, okay, I'll make a list. He's like, I want you to write down everything you love about your husband. So I made a list, and it was not hard to do. Everything from personality traits to physical traits to the way he relates with people to how his mind works. We're like polar opposites. And I sat with that, and I was just like, oh, it was like the Lord just needed to remind me what I do have. And then the Lord said, now I want you to make another list. I want you to write down the things that you need to work on. And it was a long list. And it crushed me, because here I was thinking that was all about him, and it wasn't even about him. It was about me and the work that I needed to do. And so I didn't say anything, but I prayed over that list for several weeks.
Wow.
And I didn't even tell him for a long time, because this was just about me and God and what God was building in me. And so that was a life-changing thing for me to do, to just remember and see the gift that our spouse is, especially when they're polar opposites. Like, him and I are polar opposites. He's the introverted thinker and I'm the extroverted talker. So can you imagine?
Same.
But God saw that we needed what the other had. And so he is helping me to be a better thinker, and I am helping him to be a stronger communicator. So it's beautiful. And we're just growing in that and walking beside God in it. I'm a crier. I'm sorry.
You're fine. You are fine. How important is it that teamwork during this season in your life? How important is it for the husband and the wife both to be actively communicating, to helping each other, navigate through this season?
It's everything. Because when I look, at my life now, my kids we're spread across 5 states. I never in a million years thought that would happen. I just assumed we'd all be somewhere in Minnesota and we would see each other, but Utah, Missouri, Illinois, Iowa, and Minnesota. And I'm like, I did not see this coming. But so now we know that we have each other. He's my guy. He's what I have right now. My kids are far, far away. And so I want to invest in that. I want to grow as a couple and with God. We fell in love with God and each other. We were both saved I was 20 and he was 23. And we literally got saved, met, and engaged 6 months later. So we grew up together. we fell in love with each other and God at the same time. And so it's just been, God has just been the foundation of our relationship, and he's everything. And apart from him, we have nothing. We have everything because of God. And so we try to continually grow in him too, even as a couple.
Oh, I just think, Pamela, that's going to be so encouraging for wives, whatever stage of life they're in, whether they're newly married, 10 years, or we're coming up on 28 this year. And it's just exciting to see somebody so excited to still be investing in their relationship and still growing, and still particularly growing their relationship of God, that shared love of God together. That I think that's going to be so inspiring.
Thank you.
And I wonder too, Pamela, as we're talking, will you be able to talk on, I know there's a lot of people that I'm like wanting to refer just for this, because I hear when you said like this season is so exciting, I'm excited, I love this season. You very rarely hear that from wives who are empty nesters. And it breaks my heart. I mean, more times than not, they're like, this is miserable. I want my kids back. And even getting to the unhealthy point of doing things to bring their kids back that are adults. It's like, no, stop.
No. Leave and cleave. Leave and cleave. Leave and cleave.
I think it's really interesting. So my question a little bit is, what about those wives that have not been cultivating their relationship with their husband, and now they're looking like maybe they have a senior, empty nest is coming up.
Yes.
Will you speak to those people of, I don't even know my husband at this point. Like everything has been about the kids or work and all the hubbub.
Yeah.
Will you be speaking to those people too?
Well, I hope she hears. The problem is you can't get to this phase and just start now. Like literally, this is why when we get married and we start, like having God in our relationship is everything. And so it's going to be harder. I just coached with a woman last week who was in this phase, and it was very difficult. And so we just talked about, remember the things that you loved about him and start focusing on that. Like we have to start there. We can't change our spouse.
No.
We are only responsible for ourselves. But what can I do to change my perspective? What can I do to move closer to God as he helps me see the beauty of this season?
I love that.
I love that so much. And you know what else what popped up when you were talking was if for the wives who do see that beauty and feel that sort of like, thank you, God, we're here. It's me and my husband. We can walk around the house free as a bird if we want to,
Just like the newlyweds.
Yes. Not feeling guilty for feeling that when their children.
No, it doesn't mean we adore our children and we love. And I still, I have one child moved to Utah 2 weeks ago. Maybe it was only a week ago. And I'm a little sad about it because I'm like, 3 of them were in Minnesota. And so it was so wonderful that when we went to Minnesota, we could see 3 of them. And I'm like, I can't just drive to Utah. It's very far away. So we handle the grief with God, but we don't wallow in it. And that's the thing. Women wallow in it. And we can't.
But I love that you were saying to making that list of the beautiful things, the things you love of your husband and the things that you need to work on. We're not wallowing in the negativity of what's going on. We're not wallowing in that. We're wallowing. Let's wallow around in the truth of God. Let's wallow around in the good things, because I tell people all the time, you steer where you stare. So whatever you're focusing on, that's where you're going to go. So like you're saying, like I'm not going to wallow in the fact that my kid moved to Utah. We're going to just make those times together all that much more sweet.
That's right.
And it's so much about, like, I think that's some of the growth that we have, right? Is our kids' age, we're growing too, right?
Yes,
we're learning and we're growing.
Yes.
But we are learning to celebrate them as a person.
Yes.
And They may not agree with everything. They may do things we don't love, but we get to celebrate who they are and how God made them. And how exciting to see from the infant stage to the new stage.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. Yep. We don't have to agree on everything to love them.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. They are on their journey. I did my part, but I am not responsible for how it turns out. You know, we have this vision for a child. And of course, the vision is they will walk with God always. And then when it doesn't happen, we're like, oh my gosh, I'm the worst mom ever. And we have this moms walking around with shame and guilt. But we are not authoring their story. God is. And so we hold on, but we love them. I'm going to love those wayward children just as much as the ones who are walking with God. I have 2 that are not with God, but man, our bond is strong. They love me and I love them. And I'm just waiting on God.
Yes. That's so powerful. Just wait on God. Like, you've done everything you can possibly do as a mother, and God can take care of the rest. Will take care of the rest.
He will.
Yes.
He will.
He will take care of the rest. I'm going to pull up some comments here. Someone said, again, learning from you, so I'm ready in 15 years. Still in the phase.
Good.
That's right. Get started now.
Get started.
All right. Next person said, grow and shift. I love that. And then someone said, love your smile through this season. Yes. You do have a very infectious smile. It's gorgeous.
Thank you.
That's awesome. I was wondering, before we moved on, what is it like being in this season of your life, having different children with different personalities, different beliefs? Like, how do you navigate with so many people, like, pulling on you, or so many people leaving? Like, how do you navigate through it?
Maybe you just get used to it because you've always had 5. And you're like, well, I don't know. This is just my normal. I don't know what y'all do too. That must be pretty nice. But I don't take responsibility for their adulthood anymore. And that's the thing. I will support them to the end of time, but I carry their burdens as far as praying goes, but I don't take on their stuff because that's not my responsibility. That's their responsibility. And so what happens is sometimes we just don't even understand our boundaries with our adult kids. And like, I know the hard things that I've gone through that have made my relationship with God stronger. And they were horrible things. And I don't want that for my kids, but I know that pain, when it's dealt with God, usually results in growth. So I just have to, oh, Jesus, I give him to you. But I do. I trust him. I trust God because I know he is faithful. And I know he is worthy to be trusted. So it's just all about trusting God. It all comes back to that.
I love that. Well, thank you, Pamela. I know this is going to be awesome. There's so many women who need to hear this because, like you said, people are just like, all right, you're a midlife mom, whatever. But it's needed. You know, everybody needs this encouragement no matter what phase of life they're in. So I'm so excited to see this workshop. I'm going to be taking notes. I'm nowhere near this phase, but I'm going to have that notebook for when I get to this phase. Like, this is what Pamela said, and I'm sure
awesome.
I'm prepared. All right. Well, thank you so much. Next up, we have Lauren. Lauren, same thing for you. Please introduce yourself. Give us a little background information, as well as the title of your workshop and what we can expect to learn from your workshop.
Okay, so I am Lauren Guest. I'm in Texas. I've been married for going on 7 years. And like we're talking about what we're saying, I'm not talking about the 7-year curse. It's going to be the best year
That's right.
marriage there ever was. I started that because I just turned 30 last year. And so many women freak out about 30. I'm like, 30 is going to be the best year ever. And
beautiful.
I had a brand new baby when I was 30. So, hey, bring a new life in with it. Had this one. We also have a 6 and 4-year-old as well. So we are on the other end. I love that we have the empty nest, those who are working on an empty nest, and then brand new.
Brand new.
So the title of my workshop is The 4 Steps to Financial Peace Today from Deborah, the story of Deborah, the judge.
Nice.
So a lot of times The piece, I don't like even really talking about financial peace, because a lot of people, because of Financial Peace University, Dave Ramsey things, that phrase financial peace has been used differently than what I'm talking about. More of what I'm talking about is financial harmony. And this isn't, there are plenty of great speakers that are going to be talking about like the dollars and cents of everything in the Wives of Integrity conference, but mine more goes down to the level of peace that is not of this world. Going back down to, okay, if we're relying on a bank account number or a debt payoff to bring us peace, that's a faulty foundation.
Ooh, that's good.
And so really digging into what that looks like, because I tell a lot about my story, or not a lot, but enough of the story in the workshop for you to understand. But I was in a season of plenty, with my husband being in the oil field at one point in our marriage. He's not now, but we had no peace. Like, there was money there, but the peace was not there. So it's not directly related. People want to think, okay, the dollar amount, like your salary is going to increase as your peace increase. And it's like, no, it doesn't work that way. You're relying on earthly things to do what only God can give you. So going through that, going through real tangible steps. I'm a very tangible person. I feel like that a gift that God has given me is just, hey, what can you pull out of this about ways to do things? So you'll walk away with lots of actionable steps, but also the guidance to say, hey, go to God in scripture, like go to him in prayer and meditation, and finding those things that are actually applicable for your life specifically. Like, here's some ideas, we'll spitfire some things. Here's some things you can try until you hear from God, you get that vision from God, because sometimes that can take time. You know, sometimes you'll sit with him for a day and you'll get it. And sometimes you'll sit with him for a month and you'll get it. And sometimes like years later, like, God, where's my sign, man? You know, but having those things to work on while you're building that vision with God. So that's what my workshop is about.
That's so awesome. Everybody listening, you weren't here before, but she was talking about how a lot of people, when they meet her, they automatically are like, you're going to give me a budget sheet and I'm going to know how to budget. But the financial harmony part of it is the real foundation. Like that is so awesome. If you could you kind of like explain that even a little bit more for everyone listening?
For sure. So really, for me, it was with my husband. So I'll just go back a little bit. So I actually started off as a financial coach. I went through the financial coach master training with Dave Ramsey. Like, I did all of those things. And I learned really quick that at one point in one of those baby steps, I had to ask myself, or remind myself, I'm married to Hayden Guest, not Dave Ramsey. At the end of the day, what does it matter?
That is so good.
And I love Dave Ramsey. Don't get me wrong. Like, I love what he teaches. But at the end of the day, it's my husband I have to sleep next to. And he's the one that I'm not answering. No, I'm answering to God, but I'm not answering to Dave Ramsey. I'm not answering to that. Now, I will say it's a good system to get things rolling and to make things happen. But at the same time, if it means, by God, we're going to do the baby steps and you're going to listen. Well, what was the point in that? You know, that's your marriage has to come before that. And that really, thankfully I noticed, my husband, we're yin and yang, man. We are night and day, just like Pamela was talking, like, especially when it came, we see eye to eye on so many things, but when it came to finances, we learned really quick, like, oh, something's wrong. Like, we see things so differently. And I like to tell people, which we're cattle people, we're in the agriculture industry, and I tell people he's the spurs and I'm the reins. We need both of us. Like, if it wasn't for him and his personality and his strengths, we would miss a lot of opportunities because of my fear. A lot of people, I don't say this in the workshop, but a lot of people, as I grew up, they thought, oh my gosh, she's good with money, because I could hoard money like nobody,
because of fear.
But it was all based in fear. Exactly. And I tell people, like, these financial experts were saying, oh yeah, she's good at this. And it's like, whoa. No. Actually, no.
Right.
He was just scared. And my husband, he doesn't have that. He doesn't fear. Like, He's like, man, God's always provided. He's going to provide again. Like, if this opportunity comes up, he brought this in front of us. And I'm like, but that makes our savings go down. And he's like, quit worshiping the savings.
Yes. So you're going to help couples who just view money differently.
Yes. So in this training, actually, I do help women who see money differently with their husbands. But in this training, actually, we go into how to we're just talking to the wife of how can I be at peace today? How can I be at peace no matter where my husband's at? No matter what our bank account looks like, no matter what these things are, how can I be at peace? But also, and I don't word it this way in the workshop, but also not being actively at peace. This is coming to me right now, being actively at peace. That doesn't mean peace doesn't mean you're sitting back and just like letting life happen. Like,
yeah.
That's cool. And just watching it go by. It's actually being actively resting in the fact that he is God, that he is good, that he is going to pull me through this. Now we have to put feet to our faith. Right. Faith is by doing. That's you see your faith is by doing, not just by hearing the word. So you're actually going to do things actively. Being at financial peace doesn't mean you just sit back and let life pass you by either. But going into those things that, okay, I can do things today to be at peace, no matter what is going on in my life.
I love that. I always say each live stream that there's a quote that I want to put on a t-shirt. And the stop worshiping the savings.
Yeah, that's so good.
It's definitely the quote for this moment. I love that so much. Like, I can so relate to that because my husband is more of the one who's like, all right, like, you want an ice cream cone? That's the dessert for the month. Like, that's the only treat you're getting this month. Hold on now, baby. We gotta stay where we're at. You can't either. You can have this or you can have this. You know. And I'm like, come on, live a little. Like, God's gonna provide. He doesn't want us to just, be like in bondage, because our fear financially puts us in bondage. Not just financially, but in other areas of our life. It's over. So it's kind of like you said about finding that balance. Like, you need that balance to live the life that God has called for you. You don't want to be frivolous, but you don't also want to allow fear to take a hold of your life, for God's not giving us a spirit of fear, right? Yes. So I think that's I think that's awesome.
Well, that's what's so cool about this workshop is I talk about finances, I talk about money, but like you're saying, that spirit of fear, that spirit of chaos, those things that are going on, this can be applied to, I don't want somebody to be like, oh, my finances are good, I don't need that. Not necessarily. I talk about money because that's what I enjoy talking about, and that's where my background is at. But if there is chaos going on in your life in any way, shape, or form, you can apply these principles to anything in your life. So it's not just about money. So I'm glad that you said that, so I can tell them.
And I was thinking, like you said, like, I like the idea of harmony. I think we so often as women, we worry. We carry burdens that aren't ours to pick up. We're happy to pick them up. We're happy to carry them. And I just think, I'm just excited at the thought to tune in to just really, because I think for some women, they'll hear permission to say, right, you're not looking for perfection, you're looking for this harmony, and where are you at? And it's this idea of being at peace with yourself and peace with God, and how if we can have more of that harmony and peace, I know that's going to positively impact marriages. It's going to, help to strengthen your marriage and your communication together when we can come from a place of peace or just harmony, like you said.
That's where I tell people all the time, like, that if you've ever watched Frozen, I've got young kids, so I watch Frozen. And there's it's Elsa. She's the one that has all of the ice, right? Yeah. She's frozen. And I talk about people going into a conversation. If you're like Elsa and your husband is thinking, oh, she's a storm, she is anxious, she's going to be throwing ice at me, she is not. What person wants to go into that? Like, that's not inviting.
Yeah.
But to be able to be, if I can start, and that's why I start with this in this, that's why I did this for this conference, because if I can be at peace, that's the first step. Yeah. And I can control that. I can't control everything around me, but I can control my relationship with God to bring me this peace. Now I can start the conversation with my husband. We're in financial despair. This is point one. Like point one is you have to work on yourself and be at peace. Yeah. And then everything else comes more naturally. You can have those conversations. That's where that harmony comes from.
Right. Your individual time and your individual work is what ultimately creates a better partnership.
Yes.
That's so good.
That's the whole thing of this conference. That's the whole thing about this conference, right, Aubrey? Like,
yeah,
that is, we're speaking to the wives. Everybody in this conference is speaking to the wives. We're not talking about what your husband's going to change. We're not talking about what your circumstances, how they're going to change. We're talking about you, honey. We're talking about you. You're going to get that fire under you to be the very best wife that you can possibly be.
Yes. I've learned quickly that one thing God will do is put a mirror up to you as soon as you start complaining about something that your husband is doing. You're like, God, can you just hear me out this one time? He's like, no, I want to picture your heart.
Yeah. Let's talk about you, shall we?
Yes. Exactly. Let's talk about your attitude.
Yeah.
This is wonderful. Okay, well, I'm going to read a few comments that we have over here. All right. So someone said, our 7th year of marriage was so fun.
Thank you for sharing that.
It was incredibly stretching, but one I look on with extreme fondness. Yes.
That blesses my heart. Whoever said that. Thank you so much.
Let's see. Someone said, ooh, financial harmony. I love that so much. Yes. Then let's see. Someone said, when we went through our savings for the 3rd time, not for bad choices, but because of circumstances, I said, why do we have to go through this again? My husband said, let's be grateful we can go through this again.
Yeah.
I was blown away at that perspective. That kind of peace and gratitude only comes from the Lord. That's good. That's so good.
Way good.
Okay. Hope said, oh my gosh, Lauren. It's like you've been listening in on my conversations with my husband. We are so different when it comes to money. Aren't we? Isn't that always how it works out?
Yes.
God always is like, well, you need this and that person needs this. So I'm going to put you two together to balance each other out. And he always gets the glory from it. That's another thing. Like you realize in the beginning, you sometimes fight and there's so many conflicts over your differences. But as you grow in God and you mature in Christ, you realize that those differences are needed for what he has assigned you guys to do for one purpose. So
you start appreciating them.
Yes. You're like, wait a minute, I need your calm in my storm because I probably would have lost my mind if you weren't as calm as you are. But did you guys have any more comments or questions or anything that you wanted to say before we ended this live?
Can I just say, I just want to say to all the women who are going to be tuning in, all the wives or those who are not yet wives, but looking forward to that season of life, just to come with an open heart and an open mind. I grow every time. I've grown from sitting here talking and I'm excited and I have questions for both Lauren and Pamela and more questions. And I'm not done growing. And even though I know who I am in this stage of life, God's not done growing me. And I just want to encourage you to come with that open heart, to be willing to let God stretch you. Some of the stuff is scary to look at or to think, am I going to now have to go talk about that with my husband, or how's that going to change me? Just come with an open heart, because God has a plan. And I just pray for open hearts, open minds. And I just know one of the things I love about the hearts behind the Wives of Integrity Conference is it really is about growing in God and becoming the best people we can be and growing our relationships. And it's just such a safe and loving place.
Yes. I second that wholeheartedly.
You can just stop it there. Like that was it. Yes. That's a mic drop right there, Deb.
Yes. I just wanted to say to each and every single one of you, thank you so much for taking the time out to be here today. Everything that you've said has personally touched me, and I know that it's touched so many other women, and I'm so excited to learn from you all. It's going to be amazing. I speak nothing but love, blessings, and overflow over each of you for your marriages, your ministry. And I just ask that God continues to elevate you all and to meet every need of yours. So thank you for being here. Thank you for everyone watching. We will be back again next Wednesday for our final Meet the Speaker panel.
Oh.
We'll see. Carly may change her mind. We might have another one. We never know what God may do. But as of now, next week will be the last one. So please join in at 12 next time as well. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.